Today we're going to look at using Raptor to be able to pass arguments to different procedures and how to use procedures within Raptor. To do this, I'd like you to go back into your text and take a look on page 104, and you'll see in the spotlight passing an argument by reference. This is a program where what they're doing is having someone enter a number of cups, and then this program is going to convert that to ounces. So I'd like you to take some time, if you want to go ahead and just pause the video right now if you haven't looked at it thoroughly already, and look through what this program does. You'll see that whoever did the planning for this, that they've already taken the time to do a hierarchy chart, and I would suggest that you really take the time to do this when you're working on your assignments. What we're doing right now is fairly simple, but it still helps to get in the habit of looking at how you break things down. So you'll see they've broken this down into a main procedure, and then show intro, get cups, and cups to ounces. You'll also see noted within the parentheses the different variables that are going to be used, and you'll note that in get cups we're going to use a real variable, cups, and it's going to be passed by reference. You'll remember that by reference means that there's communication between the modules. So when main calls get cups, main is going to have a cups variable, or it could be called something different there, and it's going to be able to be passed to get cups, and then get cups is going to be able to have that same information come back to main because it's working all with the same variable. They both have access to the same place in memory. When we look at cups to ounces, you'll see that we are not doing this by reference. Main will just pass. I'm sorry, we just had something happen here with my computer. Let me get rid of that. With cups to ounces, you'll see that this is just using a variable where we're going to be passing the argument to cups to ounces, but we're not going to get anything back. We're going to, with cups to ounces, do a calculation and output the information. So we don't need to get anything back from that, so we don't need to do by reference. Okay, if you take a look over at page 107, what I'm going to do is take the flow charts that you see here that have already been put together and show you how to do this in Raptor. So let me go ahead and get Raptor started up. Okay. So we're going to start out with our main procedure, and in our main procedure we just have start and end. Always remember to do your comments. So I'm going to right click on start and I'm going to add a comment, and in the comment I'd like you to put your name, and then the next line is what this is for. So yours would be chapter, whatever chapter we're working on, and then exercise, whatever the exercise is. To label this, I'm just going to call it flowchart for program. This is 3-10. And then we need to say what this is doing. So this program requests an amount of, how about we say an amount measured in cups and converts it to ounces, O-U-N-C-E-S, the result. Okay. And if we look at the flow chart, we are going to use a variable called cups needed. So I'm going to include that here. We're going to say that we're going to declare a variable, and it's going to be real, and it's called cups needed. Now, this is not actually declaring anything, but because we don't really have a way to declare variables within Raptor, this is a way to document the fact that we are going to use a cups needed variable and how we're going to be using it. So, done. I have my comment created. I want you to notice too, within Raptor, sometimes your comments will kind of be over top of your symbols. You can move your comments just by putting your mouse over top and dragging. So, feel free to do that if your comment isn't coming up in a place that's convenient. Now we do have, if we look at our flow chart that's on page 107 in the text, it is declaring real cups needed. That's the first block that you see. To kind of mimic that here, we have done our comment, but we can also just do an assignment. So I'm going to click the assignment symbol and then click on my line here, double click, and we can set our variable cups needed to 0. And that's another way to show what we're doing with the variable. And now from this point on in main, we're going to be doing calls to other procedures. So you'll see we're going to call show intro, get cups, and cups to ounces. Those have not been defined yet, so we can't put our calls in yet. So what we're going to need to do is move on to creating these other procedures within Raptor. So the first one is show intro. To create a procedure within Raptor, the first thing you have to do is make sure that your mode is set to intermediate. So if you haven't done that, click on mode and then click on intermediate, and that sets it up so that you can create procedures. Now to create a new procedure, we'll come up here to our main tab, right click on main and then choose add procedure, and you'll see that you get a dialog box that pops up. What we need to determine in here is what we're going to call the procedure, and then also what parameters we're going to be using, whether these are input or whether they're going to be output or whether they need to be both. This is not quite the same as what we're seeing within the text, where we're talking about how we're going to pass variables and whether they're passed by reference or whether they're passed by value. So it's kind of a similar concept, but not exactly the same. So just here you have to keep in mind, how am I going to use the variable? When we're doing input-output, that's kind of like reference. When we're doing just input, that's kind of like by value. So it sort of mimics what we've learned in the text, but not exactly the same. Okay, what we're doing here then is declaring our next procedure, and this is called show intro. And if you look, we do not have any parameters that we're passing to this, so that's okay. We just need all of this blank. Okay, let me get rid of this. Don't show this message again. That sounds good to me. Okay, click OK. And now we're on the Show Intro tab. We have our start and end, and you'll see start has the little parentheses after, showing that this is a procedure. And it is called Show Intro. So what we need to do now, before we go any further, I'd like you to remember to be able to put comments in these. So we're going to put in a comment, and just right-click on the procedure and add a comment. Please save now. Okay, we'll go ahead and save this. And I already have this set to my assignment solutions, which is where I like to store things. So let me see, I will call this, how about flow chart for program 3-10. And when you're doing assignments, you will have specific names that you're to use. Okay, so comments, I'm going to say this procedure displays an introductory message. So we have our comment. Now this is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 different outputs, so we'll just start adding the output. So here's our first one, and I'm going to just click to add that, double click on it to open it up. And remember, we use our double quotes. The first thing is this program, oops. This program converts measurements. Okay, click done, add another output, and you notice I could just click on the line and it's going to automatically add the same thing because that's the last symbol that I was using. Okay, and next one. Okay, and last one, and you'll notice this one has the double quotes and it looks like there are a few spaces, so I'm just going to hit the space bar a few times. So 1 cup equals 8 fluid. Done. Okay, so we've just created our first procedure other than a main procedure, which is all that we've done before. Next we need to go over and do our Get Cups procedure. So same thing, we can right click up on one of these tabs and choose that we want to add a procedure. This procedure is going to be called Get Cups. And notice with the names that we are using, camel casing, and all the names are names that are meaningful, so that when we look at the names we can pretty much tell what these are supposed to be doing. For Get Cups, we're going to add a comment, and our comment for this one, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at variables first before we get to comments. Jumping ahead of myself here. Get Cups. This one does have a variable that's coming into it, and it also needs to go back out because you'll see it's real reference cups. So our parameter, we're going to call it cups, and it needs to go in and out. Click OK. Sorry, have an email coming in here. Right click and do our comment. And our comment will say something like, let's see, we're going to ask the user to enter the number of cups. So first thing we want to do here is we want to display, enter the number of cups, and then we have input cups. Well, it's two separate symbols that we're seeing here, but in Raptor, whenever we do an input, it also has a prompt included. So I'm just going to click on the input symbol and then click right here, and you'll see we get to include our prompt. So our prompt is enter the number of cups. And where are we going to store that? We're going to store that into a variable called cups. And we are done. Okay, we have one last procedure to create. So right click, and we want to add a procedure. Now this procedure is going to be called cups to ounces. So this is going to do our calculation, and it's also going to output our result. So cups to ounces. And we have cups coming into it. You'll see that it's not marked as being by reference, so we don't need to send anything back out, so OK. So when you're working with creating your procedures, you really need to think about the variables and whether you need them to just be passed into the procedure or whether you need to get something back out of the procedure. So if it's only coming in, you can just pass it by value, but if you need to get something back out of the procedure back to your calling procedure, then you should have it as coming back out or by reference. So OK. And let's do our comment here. And our comment, let's say, this converts a value in cups to ounces and displays the result. Now if you take a look at this, the first thing that we're going to do within cups to ounces is declare real ounces. So we're going to have a local variable called ounces. So I'm going to include a comment here about that. So declare real ounces. And we are done with our comment. And as I said, the first thing we're going to do is create this local variable, and it's called ounces. And to declare it, we're just going to set it to 0. So again, this is just a way that we can show within Raptor that we are creating a variable that we're going to be using. If you were doing this in C, you would just do a declare statement. You wouldn't have to actually do an assignment statement like what we're doing here. Okay, next statement, this is another assignment. And in the assignment, we are going to set ounces, and we're going to set that to cups, which remember cups is being passed in, times 8. Now you'll notice I'm typing in just the number 8, a constant here. Think about how you would want to do this. A lot of times when you're using a value like this, you want to have it so that you can easily change it if it's something that could possibly be changed. So if that were going on, we would want to set up a constant on up towards the top of this module, and we would want to set the value of the constant and then reference the constant here. So instead, I might have done something like up here where I declared ounces, I might have declared something called like ounces per cup, and I would use all uppercase letters because that defines the constant for me, and I would assign that the value 8. Now here we're just using the number 8 in our calculation, and the reason is that there are always 8 ounces in a cup. This is not something that's going to change, so we don't need to build that flexibility into our program. But if you have a program that you're writing where you have something like a rate, a percentage, something like that that may change, then you likely would want to go ahead and create a constant, set the value of that constant right up at the very top of your module, and then go ahead and reference that on down in your module. That way it makes it really easy to come back at some point if you need to change that value. You just come to where your definition is of the constant, change the value, and you don't need to worry about checking out all of your calculations. So we have cups times 8. We've got that. And then the last thing we need to do is put out our results, so we need to add an output symbol. And in this one we're going to say that converts to, and you'll notice I have 2 and then a space before the double quotes. That way I'm going to have room between my text and the actual value that's going to print out. In the flow chart that we see in the text, it's showing commas in between. The syntax that we use in Raptor is to put in a plus sign. So we put in the plus sign, and then our variable ounces is what we're using to hold the value. And then we need to add on to that the text ounces, and again I'm putting a space before I type in ounces. That gives me a space after the actual value of ounces before the word ounces prints. So click OK, and I think we've got it all. Let me click on save just to make sure we've got everything here. I see what we forgot to do. We have all of our procedures created now, but remember when we worked on main, we couldn't go too far because we didn't have these set up yet. So what we need to do now is go back to our main procedure, and in our main procedure we have to add in our calls to these other procedures that we've created. So the first we need to add, see, we need to switch to the call symbol and add that in here. First thing we need to add is that we're calling show intro. Now notice when we call a procedure, even if we're not passing it any arguments, we have to use parentheses. Procedures are always going to use parentheses. So we put those parentheses in even though no arguments are being passed. So here's our first one. And then after we do show intro, the next thing we need to do is we need to get that number of cups from the user. So here we're going to call get cups. And you'll see that we need to pass it the number of cups. Well, if we take a look here, we're going to be using a variable called cups needed. I'm sorry, I should have turned off my email before I started this. We're going to be using something called cups needed. This is our local variable within main. So we're going to pass that local variable, cups needed. That's what we're passing into our procedure called get cups. Now you'll notice that get cups, that was using a variable called cups. That's okay, the names can be different, and I'll show you in a little bit how that works. So we'll click done. So we're going to be passing cups needed, and then we need to do cups to ounces yet. So one more, cups to, okay. And for this one we're also passing that same cups needed. So remember that with the previous procedure, with get cups, we're passing this by reference. So this cups needed, when we call get cups, because we're doing this by reference, get cups is actually going to change the value of this cups needed variable. When we pass cups needed down into cups to ounces, it's just going into cups to ounces, there's nothing coming back out. So if cups to ounces did have any statements in it where it was changing the value that we're passing to it, we would not get that back. But that's okay because with this one we just want to do a calculation and then display the result. Okay, let me save one more time. and then we'll take a look at how this works. I'm going to execute this instead of using the one that just goes through and does everything all at one shot. I'm going to do it step by step. So we'll click and we start with our start symbol, and then we're going to set cups needed to 0. And if you'll watch over here on the left, it shows us now that cups needed is set to 0. And we'll keep going. We're going to go over and calling our next procedure. So we are over here into our show intro. So show intro, it's going to put this program converts measurements. So watch over here on our console. It displayed this program converts measurements, and we'll keep going through these and you'll get each line of text. Okay, we get to end. Now watch where we go back to in main. When we get back to main, we've completed show intro, so control returns to main, but it goes back to the next statement in main. So next we're going to call get cups. Now here's where our local variable is cups needed, and you'll see cups needed is set to 0 over here in main. So let's click, and we're going to go over to get cups. Now in get cups, we're passing cups needed, but here it's going to be referred to as cups. So the names are different, but we're talking about the same thing. And actually, because this is by reference, it's looking at the same area within memory. So we're going to be able to change this. We're going to be able to change the value of what's called cups here, and it's actually going to affect cups needed back in main. So we'll keep going. Okay, get the number of cups, and we're going to get a prompt, and let's say we have 3 cups. So we'll click OK. Okay, that ends this procedure. We come back to main, and again we bounce down to the next thing that's in main. So now we're going to go cup to ounces, and I want you to see that cups needed is now set to 3. We got that value back, and we're going to go on to the next step. Now we're passing that cups to needed into this last procedure, our cups to ounces procedure. So it comes in here. Again, we're calling it cups, and this could have been called something else too. We called it cups in both the cups to ounces and get cups. We could have called them 2 different things, and that would be fine. The thing is that it's the first argument that's being passed to the procedure. In the procedure, it's the first parameter. So those things are matching up, and that's how we get those values back and forth, and how we know when we're working by reference what area of memory we're talking about. So here we're going to keep moving through. Ounces, we're setting that to 0. So you'll see that happen over here. Okay. Cups and cups needed, notice that they're both 3. So cups needed is what we had in main, but whenever we called cups to ounces, it's calling the same thing, cups. So that's also set to 3. So now we've calculated our ounces, that's 24. And now we just need to output it. So if we look over here in our console, that converts to 24 ounces. We're at the end symbol for this procedure. We go to the next step. That brings us to the end in our main procedure. And we have just processed through the entire program, starting with the main procedure that's calling these other procedures to be able to do the work. This is a good structure for a program. A lot of times when you see a main procedure, pretty much all that you're going to see there is declarations of variables that are needed, and then these calls to other procedures that are going to do the actual work. So I hope when you're looking at your assignments for this chapter that you're keeping this in mind, how you can use modules to be able to better structure your programs. And if you remember back to the beginning of the chapter, there were all kinds of really good reasons for being able to do that structured, and the benefits that you have from that. I'm not going to go into all of that at this point, since you've already read that, and it's time to get this wrapped up so that you can move on to working on other things. But please let me know if you have any questions about how all of this works. You may even want to take what I've just done in the text. You may even want to do this yourself within Raptor just to see how it all works. And with doing that, you should be well prepared then to go ahead and work on the assignment. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.